start now. Hi, my name's Dianne Bennett, and Micklo and I are members of the Dinosaur Coast Management Group, and our talk is called Introduction to the Dinosaur Tracks on Broome Beaches. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners, both past and present, of the land that we're now on and all the lands that the dinosaur tracks appear on. My part of the talk will be from the scientific whitefella point of view, and Micklo will speak on the cultural significance of some of the tracks to the traditional owners. Just a few explanations before I begin. In some of the photos there's a size ruler which is yellow and blue, and it's 30 centimetres long. When I refer to a track, this means one single track, and a trackway is two or more tracks that belong to the same animal. The tracks are trace fossils, and because they're not directly connected to body fossils, they are classified separately. And they can be put in a suborder of animals that they resemble, and then given track name and species. I'll just refer to them as species. But very little scientific work has been done around Broome, so the number of tracks, the number of species here is currently unknown. The dinosaur tracks appear in the intertidal zone, and as you can see here, lots of things happen. Like we've got 4 sauropod tracks here, so lots of things grow on them. They get covered in mud, bits fall off, so they get attacked by nature quite a bit. They appear between just near the Bird Observatory to north of James Price Point. They have national heritage listing and are of cultural and scientific importance. The tracks are the only records of dinosaurs in Australia from the early part of the Lower Cretaceous, and the only sauropod tracks in Australia, and the only evidence of stegosaurs in Australia. That one. I've got to point it at that, don't I? Sorry. They are the most diverse and abundant in the world and represent 4 suborders. So here we have the 4 suborders that we get in the tracks around here. Most of them are sauropods, and there's a fair amount of theropods, whereas up north around Quandong and James Price Point it changes, so we get more of those, very few theropods and only a few sauropods. There are 21 species so far discovered, and they are the most diverse and abundant in the world. My presentation will focus just on the tracks around Broome, with just a little bit of reference to the tracks further north up the Dampier Peninsula. The tracks are preserved in the Broome Sandstone, which is part of the huge Canning Basin. So this diagram, that is the current coastline. Here's Broome. That's where the main scientific work's been done, and this is the Canning Basin. And this outlines the Broome Sandstone, so you can see that it's a very large area, and we can only see tracks in this little area and up to here. So there's potential for a lot more tracks, although the ones out in the sea will be fairly degraded and hard to distinguish. They were made 130 million years ago when Australia was still joined to Antarctica, and we were actually further south than we are now. So we've moved around a lot in that time. The area was mostly a bare delta plain, subject to flooding and tides, but probably not estuarine. There's some evidence of vegetated edges of channels from fossilised plants, and there's fossil burrows of several different invertebrates up to 10 centimetres in diameter. So here's some of the burrows in cross-section, and they tend to be just in layers, not scattered all around. The Broome Sandstone is up to 274 metres thick and is made mainly of fine sand and fine silty sand particles. The tracks are preserved in only a few of these layers. When after a big flood event, the layer became more plastic and boggy. So you can see here, this is also sauropod tracks here. This is just incidental rocks on top. But while where the foot went, it went down, and in between it came up, so it would have been a very bulgy landscape after they'd walked across. The weight of the animal compacted the soil underneath for a fair way. This is another sauropod track, which is here. The animal would have stood on a layer way up here, so it's weathered that way, and then it weathers underneath as well, and so you can see that all this is what's left of the compacted layers. Most of the tracks around that we see around, especially the sauropods, are called undertracks, which means that what we can see is weathered down below the surface that the dinosaur actually stood on. So now we'll go to sauropods. This is a particularly nice sauropod trackway, which is just near the Broome Bird Observatory, so anybody going down there for the camp out might have a chance to see that. We have sauropods, we have sauropod tracks there, and then tracks from another sauropod there, so there's more than one animal on that particular rock. So they're obviously the long-necked dinosaurs. They were quadrupedal herbivores and varied in size from ginormous, which is a very scientific word, and which had hip heights up to 5.5 metres, down to a tiny little one which is only 2 metres in hip height. They may have travelled in herds because indicated by all the tracks that follow in the same direction, and there are 6 species. Most of the tracks around Broome are between 60 and 90 centimetres across, and the world's largest was recorded at 170 centimetres at James Price Point, which is one of the ginormous ones. This particular photo shows 2 very nice tracks from a sauropod. So this is a hind foot, and you can see the toes that are on the front and the outside. This particular species had toes a little bit more like an elephant toes, but some species had long, flexible toes, so they were quite different. This up here is the front foot, the manus, which is much smaller and much less preserved, and they're sort of kidney bean shaped because they walked on this part of their hand or foot. There are 6 species of them. Also, I think I forgot to mention it. There's many other stages of weathering, so I've got just a few more examples here. So this one, the foot would have been more that size, so it's weathered from way up here, and then all this has been compacted, and then it's weathered around the side again, so it forms almost like a table. As they weather around down a lot, they form. You get these this onion ring effect, so it's like concentric rings. So this is almost flat, but this is sort of a giveaway. If you get all these rings, concentric rings of the tiny little layers of sandstone, that's what used to be a track. On this platform we have several different ways of weathering all in the one spot. So this is completely hollow, so the track's just completely fallen out, the bottom of the track. This flatter one is a front foot. Up here the inside has stayed fairly solid, and then it's got this little raised bit around the outside. On this one you can still see some of the morphed layer which goes up, and then the bottom of it's also broken off. So, everybody says, well, what does a dinosaur track look like? Well, on this particular platform it looks like 4 different things. So you just need to sort of see what they all look like and get your eye in, and then you can guess. This one is almost gone, so you can just see a tiny little ring of slightly hardened stuff around the outside. Now we'll go to the theropods, which most people find more exciting, but the others are good too. This particular one is 45 centimetres long, so that's measured from the heel to the tip of the claw. And they were very abundant around Broome compared to the coast or up Roebuck Bay, and they were the carnivores of the area's dinosaur world. They had 3 distinct toes, and they're fairly easy to recognise compared to the sauropods. There are several clear trackways with up to 6 tracks from which good science can be gathered. So each of the pink cubes is where there's a track from this particular trackway. But the scientists actually tell me that they can gather good science from one track as well. Most of the theropod tracks around Broome are attributed to Micklo brumensis, which was the first track species in Australia to be named, and there's a total of 5 species. So they don't vary as much in shape as the sauropod tracks. It mostly depends on the angle of the toes to each other and how long the toes are. Of the tracks that I've found, this is the smallest one, which is here. So that's 17 centimetres. And then the largest one is, I'll get this by the end. The largest one is this one, which is 50 centimetres. This is an under track, so it's slightly bigger than the foot of the animal that would have actually made it. Most of the tracks around Broome fall into the 30 to 45 centimetre range, which is up to 2 metres at hip height. These tracks are very bird-like and are called morella or emu man in the stories of the traditional owners. Some theropods evolved into today's birds, so you've got them to thank for all the shorebirds and stuff. They can present in a few different ways. So this is actually called a natural cast. So the filling that went into the impression of the foot goes hard, and then more layers come on, and for some particular reason the whole lot lifts out and flips over, and you get this. I'm told that they're very, very rare in the dinosaur world, but we have 4 so far found in Broome. This one's just a bit fainter. So you can see that this toe is disappearing. That toe is still fairly obvious. And then the heel comes down here. So when there's sand on that, you still can see the outline of the impression, and then you know that there's something underneath that's really exciting. This one's a hollow one, which you get a few of, so that it's changed shape slightly, and then the sort of middle of the pad of the foot is still solid. The other two suborders are ornithopods. So I'll just outline this because it can be a bit hard to see. So there we have one toe and a third toe, a second toe and a third toe. This particular track is 55 centimetres across. So ornithopods were 3-toed bipedal herbivores, and there's only a few examples of them around Broome. But there's much more up the coast, and they vary in size from 11 centimetres to 70 centimetres, which is up to 22 metres at the hip. There are 4 species, and they vary in shape from having long digits to the more rounded toes, like this particular example. And then we have the therophorans, which are the armoured dinosaurs, such as Stegosaurus. So the track for that is here. This is a particularly large one, which is 80 centimetres from the heel to the toe. They were also herbivores, and there were 6 species. There is some evidence that they may have travelled on their hind feet at times, because some of the trackways that they're found up north, they can see the footprints of the 4 feet, and then only 2 and then 4 again. Tracks have been recorded from 16 to 80 centimetres, like this one, which is about 3 metres at the hip, and the track shapes vary a lot in this particular species, in this particular group, depending on the species. And these are the people I have to thank. The first 2 obviously for technical advice, because they're the paleontologists, and the others with my PowerPoint presentation. And now I'd like to hand over to Micklo. Thank you very much.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Micklo Corpus. I'm a Yarrow man. This is our country.
I'll just lift this up for you, Micklo. Nice and close. There you go, mate.
Okay. And first of all, I'd like to thank the Bird Observatory for having us here to have this opportunity to make people aware about the prints out there. That's so valuable to us. But just a little bit about the bay there. My dad, he had a fish trap out in the bay, and it's made out of wire. He had it from the early 60s to the early 70s. And I can remember one particular day, because it'll stick in my head this particular day, to empty out the fish trap. Well, and we have to go out there, or he has to go out there any time of the day when the tide's out. Sometimes it's 4 o'clock in the morning, sometimes it's 2 o'clock in the morning, sometimes it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. This particular day, to empty out the trap, he normally gets his friends to go with him because we're at school. This particular day, Good Friday, I think it was. Oh no, it was Easter Sunday. So he woke us up about 4:30 in the morning, and he says, "Oh, can you guys, kids, give us a push with the car?" And we lived on Savelle Street. So to get the car started, we had to push it all the way to Seaviews from Fong Store. So anyway, he cranked the car up while he was at Seaviews, and he says, "Jump in, kids, I'll take you home." He didn't. He took us out in the flat. And the car broke down on the way out there. And well, prior to that, he was under the bonnet before we pushed the car, and I happened to go and ask him what's happening, and he said, "It's all fixed, just give us a push." So he assumed that he put all the tools back in the back of the car. So anyway, on our journey there, the car broke down. He said, "What's wrong with this bloody car?" So he opens the bonnet, and I said, "Oh, Dad, I forgot the spanner on the battery." And he says, "What's battery?" And I said, "Oh, it's April Fool's." But we had to go out there, and April Fool's is a special day for me. But we ended up going out there and helping him clean out the net, not only that time, but every other time too when his friends weren't there. With the fish that we collected, we put it in the back of the truck, and we went around the town and sold fish. And those days, it was 50 cents a fish, sometimes 25 cents a fish. Stingrays and things like that. So anyway, the people, my countrymen, they didn't have enough money to buy cars, so they relied on my dad, because he had a car and he provided to the people that didn't have cars to go out as far to get these fish. So we came dependent on the bay. So it was our job to look after it, to make sure that, yeah, it provides for the community, the people, and it's been looked after. And we noticed that the birds were there too, and they were abundant, so we had to look after that too. All the animals, such as the dolphins, dugongs, turtles and things like that, they've all been looked after. And we noticed that the population has increased over the years. Now there's 4,000 registered boats in Broome. Could we handle 10,000? What about 7? I'll drop it down to 4. But yeah, there's a huge impact on it now with the boats. And we have to meet the needs to launch these boats. So the Yarrow is providing some resources, enabling us to protect the bay and have a safe mooring for the boats and things like that, and not to disturb the birds. Especially the dinosaur prints there. They've been there for a long time. I heard a story that is over 80 years old now, and the old cultural leader that told us a story that there's a connection with the three-toed dinosaur, like the theropod.
Yeah, this one up
Yeah,
here.
that's the one. Yeah. The old bloke said that he was the law creator. He created law in this country, and his name was Morella. And today he left his footprints here, and he lives in the Milky Way today. So you can see him in the Milky Way. Now, if that's so, well, the name Morella, because the dinosaur people, they tell me that the prints are 130 million years old. Well, the name Morella, we didn't make it up 80 years ago. So it's in song and in dance. We're working with the scientists to confirm whether our language is 130 million years old. But it is important, the story that we inherited, and the jobs that we inherited to look after country and to make people aware about our heritage and our culture and the significance of the bay and the prints. And I think it's an opportunity to make people aware of the significance of it, and we all got a role and responsibility to look after it, because if we had 15,000 boats here, we need to plan to accommodate these people. The population is going to increase. When I was growing up, there was about 7,000 people in the community. Today I understand that there's 19 to 17,000 people, and it's increasing 14% every year. I've been looking after country for some time there, but the biggest devastation or the impact that has on the bay there is that there's a mining lease on that bay. We need to talk with them, with the mining people, to remove this. They said that they will, but we haven't had confirmation in writing to say that they have done this. The mining lease is exploration for either gas or oil. Now the big ships, they want to come into the port too, so we have to dredge to make a pathway and to accommodate these boats. But I hope that they talk to all of us in this room here, because we've got grave concern of where this thing could happen, and could it happen here, or should we relocate it for the interests of the birds, the dinosaur prints, the people and that bay. It needs to be looked after. But I won't go on. I'd just like to say again, thanks for the opportunity from the Bird Observatory for us having an opportunity to make people aware about our dinosaur prints, our heritage and our culture and our bay. And I'd be the first person to stand up if I see anything happening in the bay there, like dredging and stuff like that. But and I hope that we can stand together instead of I lead and you may not follow. You may lead, I might not follow. So if we stood side by side, we can do it together. But thanks very much for that.
Do we have any questions?